Hi there and welcome to this screencast on JetBrains Rider. We'll cover the basics of working with Rider and how we can develop our libraries and applications using this new IDE. In case you haven't heard of Rider yet, let's start with a quick overview. Rider is a cross-platform .NET IDE. We can use it to develop .NET Framework, .NET Core and Mono-based projects on Windows, Mac OS X or Linux. It supports C#, VB.NET, F#, XAML, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, TypeScript and so on. Rider lets us develop pretty much any type of application, including .NET desktop applications, services and libraries, Unity games, ASP.NET and ASP.NET Core web applications, and Xamarin. Rider is not just a code editor, it's a real IDE, continuously analyzing our code and providing feedback on its quality and suggesting improvements. It comes with debugging, navigation, refactoring, source control integration, a NuGet client, unit testing support for many .NET and JavaScript unit testing frameworks, as well as database integration and much more. Rider is based on ReSharper and IntelliJ IDEA. The .NET functionality in Rider is powered by ReSharper, meaning that we get more than 2000 of ReSharper's powerful code inspections, fantastic navigation support and refactoring. The frontend is built in IntelliJ IDEA, our time-tested and well-renowned platform in which we build IDEs for other languages, such as PHP Storm, PyCharm or WebStorm. In fact, you could think of Rider as being ReSharper plus WebStorm, giving us great .NET support as well as HTML, CSS, JavaScript, TypeScript and so on. If you haven't already, head over to jetbrains.com/rider and download Rider for your operating system. After installing Rider and launching it for the first time, it will prompt us whether we want to import settings from a previous installation. For now, let's just leave the option to not import settings. Next, Rider will ask us if we have a valid license. We can enter license details or just evaluate for free for 30 days and accept a license agreement. Rider will now take us through a couple of steps to customize the environment. In the first step, we can select a UI theme. We can select the light theme or the dark theme. I'm a big fan of the dark yellow theme here, so let's pick that one. Next, we can choose the editor theme. There are several themes that are shipped by default, such as the ReSharper Dark or Visual Studio Dark theme. On plugins.jetbrains.com, there are more themes available for downloads. We will also have to select a key map. While Rider can be used with a mouse, a lot of its power comes from smart keyboard shortcuts that give us immediate access to certain functionalities without having to move our hands away from the keyboard where we're writing codes. If you're currently a ReSharper user and are coming to Rider and have been using the Visual Studio key map in ReSharper, you can select the same key map for Rider here. If you've been using the ReSharper key map in Visual Studio, you can select the middle option. And if you've been using any of our other IDEs, such as IntelliJ IDEA, WebStorm, PyCharm and so on, the Rider key map will feel very familiar. I'll select the left option here. Rider comes with a lot of tools enabled by default. Depending on the type of applications you are building, Rider can be tuned to include or exclude certain functionalities. Web developers can choose the frameworks they want to work with and enable or disable some that are not needed. The same thing with version control. If we're not planning to use CVS, for example, we can disable it for now. We can also enable or disable certain languages and frameworks like F# or Unity and so on. Let's continue. Since Rider shares its core with our other IDEs, a lot of plugins are already available for use. Rider lets us install and enable a couple of featured plugins. For example, if we want to enable IDEA Vim, we can enable it here. We can also enable Python support, but I'll just go with the defaults. On the last screen here, there are a couple of tutorials displayed, but since you're already watching one, we can just start using Rider. After the initial setup, Rider shows us a dialog where we can create a new solution and project, open an existing one from disk, or check one out from one of the popular version control systems. When we create a new solution, we will get a number of project templates. We can create an empty project, a .NET class library, or an ASP.NET MVC application. We can also generate unit testing projects and so on. There are templates available for the full .NET framework, .NET Core, F#, Xamarin, etc. But instead of creating a new solution, let's open an existing one from disk. Keep in mind that Rider works with the same solution and project files that Visual Studio uses. This means that we can open any solution or project, whether ASP.NET Core, .pf or other project types. It also means that some people in our team could use Visual Studio and ReSharper, while others can work with Rider, all together. I want to quickly show you that the welcome screen may look slightly different if you've used Rider before. On the left, we'll now get a list of recent solutions and projects we have worked with. We can just start typing, and Rider will filter this list for us. Hitting Enter or just clicking will open the solution. Let's have a look at the Rider UI. We have the menu at the top, and right underneath is the navigation bar. Depending on which file we are working with, the navigation bar shows us the full path to that file. The navigation bar also makes it easy to navigate around our project and, for example, go to another file in the current folder. Rider can be used with the mouse, but it's also very keyboard-centric, so in my current key map I can use Ctrl F2 to jump to the navigation bar and then easily navigate around. Another toolbar on the top here is for compiling and running our application. We can build the solution, change the current solution configuration, we can select the run configuration or start debugging. Some common version control operations like updating and committing changes are also available from here. On the left, we can find a Solution Explorer. It shows us our solution structure and all of the various projects that are loaded. We can expand the different nodes and jump to a file, or add a new file using the context menu or the keyboard shortcut Alt-Insert. There are various other tool windows that we can open from the menu, or from the bottom left corner here. As we can see, some tool windows are prefixed with a number. If we press Alt plus that number, we can jump to the tool window using a keyboard shortcut as well. There is the Structure tool window, which shows us the structure of the current file and lets us navigate around it by clicking or using the keyboard up and down arrows. A nice thing is that inside this tool window, we can just start typing to search through this structure. Another tool window .NET developers will use quite often is the NuGet tool window. In most cases, Rider triggers NuGet restore automatically, but NuGet is much more than restore, and we still want to be able to manage packages for our projects. Rider comes with its own NuGet client, where we can see the list of packages that are currently installed and upgrade to a newer version using the buttons on the right. We can also search for packages. Rider uses some smart caching and learns about the packages that we use often. This makes it real fast to search for packages on NuGet, so for example let's search Automapper. As we can see, the result comes back pretty much immediately with information about the package. We can now install this package into our current project using the buttons on the right. But there's more. We can also configure package sources and, for example, add our own private feeds, and we can manage the different NuGet caches. The Unit Tests tool window will show us all unit tests that were discovered in our solution. Various unit test frameworks are supported like NUnit and XUnit, as well as some client-side test frameworks like Jasmine or QUnit. Tests are shown in a tree and we can run or debug them from here. We can also navigate to the tests and run an individual test or complete test class from the editor using the icons in the left gutter here or using the Alt-Enter context action. Rider will then execute the tests, and once completed, we can inspect the results and see the test output. We also have the version control tool window, where we can see the various changes that were made to our sources but are not committed yet. Rider supports pretty much every major source control system, so CVS, Subversion, Git, Mercurial, TFS, Perforce, etc. Let's make a change here and then see that there is now a file that has been modified. From this tool window we can now commit, and we'll see a nice dialog with all the files that were modified. In the bottom we see a diff of the changes that were made. We can add a commit message and optionally do things like reformatting or cleaning code based on the rules that were configured. When we're good to go, we can commit or commit and push to the origin. But let's cancel this for now. There are more tool windows, like Errors in Solution, where we can enable solution-wide analysis and see code quality issues that are discovered. There's a built-in terminal where we can work in a shell from within Rider. There's the Database tool window, where we can connect to many database systems like SQL Server, Oracle and MySQL, and then manage our database and run queries from inside the IDE. One last thing I want to show you here are the settings. Rider has many configuration options which we can specify, for example appearance, key maps, build options and so on. It allows us to search for a setting, so for example if we want to install a plugin, we can search for plugins and see which plugins are installed, as well as install more plugins from our gallery. Want to change the font in the editor? Just search for font and we get immediate access to the font settings in Rider. We can use the Solution Explorer on the left and expand nodes to find the file or type we are looking for. It works, but it's a bit cumbersome. Rider has much more powerful ways of navigating around a solution. One action to remember is Search Everywhere, which we can invoke using Ctrl-T or double Shift. Using this simple keyboard shortcut, Rider lets us search everywhere in our solution, IDE and settings. For example, let's search for the word View. Rider will now show us everything containing this word view, for example recent files, types, file names, symbols, but also actions and settings. So for example if we would search for the word NuGet, we can navigate to types and files containing that word, but also to the NuGet tool window. We can browse through this menu using the keyboard arrows and hit enter when we want to invoke the navigation. Now let's close this one. Forgot the shortcut for the rename refactoring? Well, we can use Search Everywhere and search for rename and then invoke the refactoring from here. Want to manage plugins installed in Rider? Well, we can search for the word plugin and then go to the right entry in the list and then jump to the settings from here. But let's cancel and focus on navigating around our codebase for a bit. I know that this specific project contains a type called IViewEngine. We could use Search Everywhere and search for the full type name, which will find our type and allows us to navigate there, or use camel hump so that IVE matches the camel case characters for IViewEngine. Hitting enter now will take us to the interface. We can navigate to symbols inside of our file using Alt \. Let's jump to one of the methods in here. And let's maybe jump back to our interface name now as well. Wherever we are located in our code, we can always use Navigate To. This action will show us all the navigation options that are available in the current context. For example, we could navigate to implementation, base symbols, find usages of our interface, etc. Let's try Find Usages first. After invoking it, the Find tool window opens where we can see all usages of our IViewEngine interface. We can navigate through it and, for example, jump to source to look at a specific usage of our IViewEngine. From the toolbar here, we can apply some filters on the list and, for example, only show usages that have write or read access. Now let's go back to our IViewEngine and from there use Navigate To and select Navigate to Implementation. As we can see, this interface has many implementations, so we will have to select one from the menu that shows up. Like many menus and tool windows in Rider, we can use the keyboard arrows to move up and down in this list, or simply start typing to search through it. So if we search for MD, we will find Markdown View Engine using camel humps, and we can jump there. Again from here, we could use Navigate To jump to the base symbol and so on. A really nice thing is that Rider comes with an integrated decompiler. Take this IEnumerable interface here. The sources for it are in the .NET framework, but maybe we want to check the implementation anyway. We can use Navigate to Implementation or Control-Click, and Rider will then decompile the code for us so we can see what's going on under the covers of this interface. This works with any referenced assembly, so for example if we're using JSON.NET we could also decompile the classes from that one. It makes sense to learn a few other shortcuts to quickly navigate around. For example, we can jump to the tool windows that have a number in front of them using Alt plus that number. So Alt 1 in this case will jump to the Solution Explorer, and Alt 2 will jump to the Favorites tool window. One that I like a lot is jumping to the navigation bar, where it's easy to use the arrow keys to navigate to a nearby location, and then use, for example, the generate action and generate a new file at that location. If you feel overwhelmed, keep in mind that we can reach every type, file, action, setting and tool window using search everywhere. And if there's an action that you use frequently and you see it in the search results, the shortcut will be displayed right next to it. For example, searching for navigate shows us navigate to, as well as the corresponding shortcut. As developers, a lot of our time is spent editing codes. In Rider we can edit code in many programming languages like C#, VB.NET, F#, JavaScript, TypeScript, HTML, CSS, Less, Sass and so on. For example, here we see a C# file where we can add some codes. We get code completion. For example, if we type this dot, we see a list of properties and methods that are available in the current context. A nice thing is that if we use a type that is not referenced yet, say a generic list like so, Rider provides us with a quick fix that we can invoke using Alt-Enter to, in this case, import missing references. All of these quick fixes are context-aware and are usually triggered by the various code inspections that Rider runs on our code in the background. In the right gutter here, we can see that Rider shows us a yellow exclamation mark, which means that it found a potential issue in our code. We can click one of the markers here, and we see that here we have a possible null reference exception. Again, using Alt-Enter, Rider can fix the code for us. Rider has thousands of inspections for the languages that it supports, which we can see from the settings under Inspection Severity. We can expand these inspections and see which ones are available for each language. If we want, we can also set the severity of an inspection. For example, let's search for null and set the severity of our possible null reference exception to error. This will make it more obvious when Rider encounters such a case in our codebase. So if we save and go back to the editor and undo, we will now see that on the top right corner, instead of an exclamation mark, there's a clear error. And just a quick note, we can also set the severity using the Alt-Enter context action, so we don't have to go through the settings each time. Let's look at a CSS file. We can see we get syntax highlighting, and in the left gutter we can see CSS colors get highlighted as well. Let's place the cursor on this color code here. If we now press Alt-Enter, we can see there are a number of contextual actions available. For example, picking a new color from palette. These context actions are available for all of the languages that Rider supports, including SCSS and Less, for example. Rider also supports JavaScript and TypeScript as well. Again, we get syntax highlighting and code completion while writing code, and inspections are there as well. Now perhaps one more interesting thing when writing code in the editor is generating codes. In this person class here I have already added two properties. To add a constructor I can use the generate action using Alt-Insert and have Rider generate a variety of things for me, for example a constructor or things like equality members. Let's generate a constructor. We can set some options and then let Rider write this boilerplate constructor code for us, including null checks for all the different parameters. This generate action is available in many languages, as well as in the Solution Explorer, for example. So if we hit Alt-1 and go to a folder, we can use Alt-Insert to generate a new file here as well. Rider has the concept of run and debug configurations. They are essentially what the name says, a configuration on how to run or debug our application. There's always a default run configuration, which we can see here in the toolbar. We can simply hit run or debug and start our application. The first time we do this, Rider will ask us to confirm the settings to make sure we start the correct project with the correct settings. We can pick the projects, the arguments that should be passed to the executable, and even run other tools when we start this configuration. But let's cancel for now. The nice thing is that we can create many of these run configurations from the toolbar here. In this project, we have a front-end web application in ASP.NET MVC, as well as a console application backend. We can create a new run configuration for our console backend by selecting the .NET project type here and then picking the correct project. We can specify some other options here or give it a name. Let's call this one backend. If we now save, we can easily switch between the configurations we want to work with. Now another nice thing is that there are many different types of run configurations. For example, if we want to always run both the frontend and the backend in this solution, we can create a compound type run configuration, which does exactly that. We can pick any other run configuration that should be started along with this one. Run configuration types are plentiful. We can add a Docker deployment, run npm commands, run a gulp or grunt target, run a Node.js application, run Unity or Xamarin, and so on. Once we have a run configuration, we can use it to debug our code. Let's add a breakpoint here and then launch the debugger. This will start our web application and attach the Rider debugger to it. Now let's click the URL to our web application here so that it actually executes something. And when the executing code reaches our breakpoint, Rider will pause execution so we can see what's going on. The first obvious thing, Rider shows us the line of code that we are breaking on in yellow. It also shows us the value of the variables inside the editor, making it easy to see the current value of a variable. In the debugger tool window, we can see a few things as well. There's the current stack on the left, where we can see the code path that is being executed. For every item in the execution stack, we can see the variables that are currently in scope. We can look at the current value of a certain variable, we can expand nested objects, etc. Using the toolbar or keyboard shortcuts, we can now step through our code line by line and see what changes, both directly inside the editor as well as in the tool window. The debugger comes with quite a few options. We can set conditional breakpoints that will only trigger when a certain condition is met, and from the breakpoint options here we can do more things, such as, for example, not pausing execution, but instead just printing a line to the output window, essentially confirming that the breakpoint was hit. Do explore these options, because things like dependent breakpoints, for example, are very powerful tools while debugging. Rider comes with many options for refactoring codes. For .NET code, most of ReSharper's refactorings are already available in Rider, as well as over 350 context actions. For front-end languages like JavaScript, TypeScript and so on, Rider comes with WebStorm's refactorings and context actions. The quickest way of discovering which refactorings are available at a given location in code is using Refactor this. We can see we can move to another file, another folder, rename, extract an interface, and so on. Let's extract an interface. We can give it a name, we can select where we want to generate it and which members should be part of it. Rider will then generate the interface and ensure our class implements it. Now let's take this convert-to-JSON method here. It would be more logical if the parameters were in a different order. We can make use of the change signature refactoring to do this. Let's move the indent parameter to the last position and continue. Rider will now not only update the method signature, but also make sure that all calling code is updated. So here in employee report, the code that calls into our convert-to-JSON method is also updated, making sure that our code is still correct and compiles. Using Alt-Enter, Rider will show us available actions based on the context we are in. Let's move employee report to its own file. Rider happily complies. Now let's say our convert-to-JSON utility here is only used in one place. Of course we can keep it, but we could also inline the call to JSON.NET. Again, using Refactor this, we can inline our methods. Rider will then update our code and instead of call into our utilities class, just call into JSON.NET directly. There are many more refactorings for .NET and other languages in Rider that can help us update our code without breaking it. Do have a look at our web help for more information. We hope you enjoyed this relatively quick overview of JetBrains Rider, our cross-platform .NET IDE. It supports many programming languages and frameworks and helps us write, navigate and refactor code like a pro. Head over to jetbrains.com/rider and give it a try. Thank you for watching.